rarely does this individual do interviews, rare if ever. In fact, I think the last time he was on this show might have been one of his last interviews, and that was about 10 or so years ago. The reason for his lack of interviews over the last decade most likely was because of his job. He was a Bellator executive for the better part of the last decade, and now he's a big-time free agent. As I said at the top of the show, he was at the PFL event on Friday, but right now his status is somewhat unknown. I have called him the Al Heyman of Bellator because he's behind the scenes getting deals done, but not speaking to anyone. I've compared him to Hunter Campbell at the UFC. He is, part matchmaker, part executive, part problem solver, a jack of all trades, if you will. He is Mike Kogan, and he is kind enough to join us right now. There he is. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Hey, Ariel. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great to talk to you again. It has been a while.
Yeah. Figured every decade or so we'll get together.
All right. All right. So thank you for joining us. I think a lot of people are very curious to hear from you because you're one of those guys, like for people like me, I knew what you did behind the scenes for Bellator and understand how important you were to the success of the promotion, and now curious to know where you go from here. And so let me ask you off the bat, what has the last few months been like for you, as it has been sort of like the worst kept secret in the sport that, Paramount Viacom were going to get out of the fight game and that this PFL deal was pending for you since you poured so much into the brand over the past decade? What was that like?
It was bittersweet. It's kind of like, the end is coming and you don't know when. It kept getting pushed back and pushed back. It was obviously a very complicated deal, and powers that be were dealing with it. But, on our end, it was just kind of like, enjoy the moment. I think we went out with a bang. I think we put on some of the greatest fights we've done in the last 3-4 shows, as we were winding down. And also it was kind of like, let's try to fight as many people as we can. Some of our cards had, 18 fights on there because we didn't know what the schedule is going to be like, what's going to happen in the future. And, we felt like a lot of these guys are owed fights and we should just do them. So, we loaded it up. It was a lot of fun. I think our last show was in Chicago was, spectacular.
Were you hoping that someone would buy Bellator and take it in a completely different direction? In other words, were you somewhat worried about the purchase or acquisition by PFL because that would mean a merger as opposed to just a new owner and running it separately?
For myself, I felt like post-pandemic, we kind of came out as this Bellator 2.0, where the legacy fight, the legends fights, all that stuff was kind of behind us. And we were coming out with the young guns and the guys that we were able to raise. Our very first show out of the pandemic was Patchy Mix fighting Juan Archuleta for a 135-pound title. It was a main event. We've never done that. 2 homegrown guys fighting for titles. And from there on, I thought we had the momentum, where the roster was growing and building, and a lot of the younger talent we've been investing in over the years was coming to, pay dividend, like AJ McKee's of the world, Aaron Picos, so on and so forth. Johnny Eblin, kind of came to bloom right after pandemic. So for me, I would love to see this product continue. I think it's on the right trajectory, and with the proper TV exposure and marketing, I think it can be something special. What PFL's plans with it are yet to be remain unknown. They did say they're going to run Bellator in 2024. So, hopefully they will see the value in continuing the brand and keeping it. We'll see. But yeah, what I'd rather seen, somebody come in, inject a bunch of money, get us on a bigger TV platform and kind of keep the momentum going. Yeah, probably is. But that's not to say PFL is not going to do that. Nobody knows what they're going to do.
So sure. We'll see. Yeah, of course. Only time will tell. A lot has been said, and I'm wondering how much you could say about the relationship with Showtime / Paramount Viacom, that they didn't give you the right support, the right marketing as they did with boxing. Can you speak on that? Did you feel like they weren't showing you the same kind of love?
This is probably why I haven't been allowed to do interviews in the last decade. Because I tend to say things that upset people. I don't know if it's Showtime per se. I don't want to point the finger at Showtime and say specifically, everybody else was in line to fall over to promote us, and then Showtime was keeping us down. I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think Showtime was a dead network when we got there. And 3 months later, the CEO of Viacom comes out and goes, yeah, this is a dead network. We're going to shut it down. So I think by virtue of where we ended up, it was kind of like the beginning of the end. I mean, we went from, Spike being in 93 million households down to CBS Sport, which was still in 54 or 55 million households, to a paywall with 25 million subscribers. It's kind of going backwards. So that definitely didn't help. I think Showtime might have tried and do whatever they can do, but there's only so much they can do. And they're sitting behind a paywall, and their subscriptions were dwindling down. So I don't know that it's Showtime per se. I just think, in a corporate structure that is so multifaceted and has so many shows and so much product, we just kind of got lost, and we were just being ping-ponged around.
So last week I had Don Davis on the show, PFL founder, and we spoke about a lot of the employees, and we spoke about you, and he very clearly wants you to come over to work for the new Bellator, and I saw that you were at the event on Friday. I'll ask you specifically about the event in a moment, but just curious, are you coming over? Do you have a deal with Don Davis and the PFL to come over and run the new Bellator?
I don't have a deal with Don. I have met with him and talked to him a little bit. I actually have a meeting with Don and Pete this week to kind of talk a little more about what that deal would look like and what it would be like. I'm definitely interested. I believe I still have plenty to offer in this space. Slowly I've crept into, almost 25 years in this industry, from, from seeing you sitting in a hotel lobby editing your own shows to, here you are, a big superstar. So, I think I've had a long journey, and I have a lot of experience, and I can offer a lot. So, we're going to meet, we're going to talk. I believe a big part of me joining is going to depend on under what terms. And I don't mean just money. I mean, what am I there to do? If I'm there to make a difference, make a contribution, my voice will be heard, then I'll probably be very interested in joining. If I'm there to just kind of implement whatever strategies somebody else has, then I probably will pass. I think it's not my cup of tea.
Right. No, I definitely know that, knowing you. What would the role be?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay, so when they say that we want you to come over, they're not talking specifics just yet? That's what this call or meeting is going to be about?
They just said, we want you to come over. We want you to, work with the roster, work with the fighters, but I don't know. I have no idea.
Would that be Bellator only, or would that be for the entire PFL?
My understanding was it was to look at the entire roster and how it integrates, and integrate some of the rosters and bring some of the fighters over to the PFL side to be part of the season and the tournaments, and then also build a championship type of caliber shows around for Bellator. I believe the new name they will be using is like Bellator, International Bellator Championship Series or something like that. So, part of that will be the bigger fight, the champions. Obviously, probably some of the guys in the weight classes that PFL currently doesn't have, like 135, 185. But I don't know. We've had very kind of, top line conversations without digging into anything.
What role would you like? If it was up to you and they said, Mike, what do you want to do? What's your ideal situation?
Let's just say what they offer.
Okay, fair enough.
Ideally, I'd like people to get out of my way and let me do my thing. I think I could do it pretty well.
Well, would you like to be a face? Like, would you like to be the guy at the dais saying, in addition to all the other stuff behind the scenes, the guy doing the interviews, the guy saying this is why you need to watch, every promotion kind of needs that guy, I think. Would you like to be that guy?
If I'm the best person for it, then yes. I don't really care. Like, to me, it's not important who is doing it, so long as it's done right and the messaging is there. And, somebody has to narrate this thing, right? I believe in MMA, fans expect a person to narrate the company's direction and the fights and some of the fights to be made and some of the fights not to be made. And without that narrative, you're just kind of producing content, right? And you're just throwing it out there. And then you're leaving it to everybody else's interpretation as to what they think is going on and what they think is happening. And then you have reporters that are speculating, and everybody's speculating, right? Somebody needs to be able to say, this is what we're doing. This is why these people are going to fight. I think this is going to be the next this, and the next going to be the next that, and whatever it is. And I believe that, it doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have, it can be somebody else, but it has to be somebody. Somebody has to narrate. Somebody has to tell the story and get you excited. And I believe it's somebody that, has to be somebody that knows about fighting and somebody that when they speak, somebody will listen and be like, okay, I totally see it. This person has earned the right to say these things as opposed to just everybody offering their opinions, which happens a lot in our industry.
I know you're probably going to say, I don't want to speak for him, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway, and hopefully you give me a different answer. Do you think Scott Coker is going to come over?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Because Scott was always the guy who led the way. And, there's too much overhead here, I think, as it is. So I don't think so.
When you say overhead, what do you mean? Like there's already people in place that are leading the way?
Yeah, there's a pretty elaborate structure there already in place.
Okay.
So, I don't think Scott's going to. I mean, obviously,
sure,
that's his decision, but I don't see him doing that. When you're somebody who's done this for 30 some odd years, who do you answer to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
who do you ask?
It's tough to be the employee after you were kind of leading the charge. How do you feel about the decision to keep the Bellator brand going as opposed to just calling it PFL Champion Series? Keeping this separate thing going, how do you feel about that decision?
I mean, I think it's a smart decision because you could always roll it in later, But Bellator, I believe, has a pretty good recognizable name, especially in European markets, which is where PFL wants to run Bellator mostly, right? In Europe, we're a known product. We've filled arenas in Paris, in Milan, in London, in Dublin, Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So why get rid of it? Keep it. I think it's a smart thing to do, and it shows that PFL is open-minded into seeing, hey, let's see where this goes. Also, I think from a strategic standpoint, and this is just my opinion, I don't know what their view is, why keep it. PFL is kind of set in its format, right? There's the preseason, season, championships, titles, we're done, start over. There's not much flexibility there. With Bellator being a brand that runs outside of that format, now you have some flexibility. Now you can create some interesting matchups and some fights that fans might want to see that you can't do during the course of a season. So you're kind of limited there. So, maybe they're trying to see how that might work and see what happens. I don't know, but I think it's a smart thing. I don't think it's a stupid thing.
How do you feel about that PFL format?
Tournament format?
Yeah.
I like. Obviously, we've run tournaments at Bellator.
Right.
I worked for K1 before, and we've run tournaments. So been around tournaments. I think I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I also believe that it's very challenging to get fans behind it in large numbers. It's very difficult to get a fan engaged into a tournament with multiple weight classes and have them care about all of them. I think it's more challenging to do that because the fan base was built in a not in that format. They're built as a regular fight fan, excited about this guy fighting this guy and that guy doing this and this. With tournaments, everything is kind of predetermined. So there's very little speculation. It leaves very little room for any kind of what if scenarios. It's just more of just watching a progression. of the tournament and getting to the finals. So, and there's narratives there, but it's just, I believe it's difficult to tell when it's 6, 7 different weight classes. Obviously, PFL has done it. They're continuing to do it. It's a model that, they're built on. But in my personal opinion, I think it's a little challenging to really get fans behind being able to cheer on 6 different people fighting in a tournament.
So you went to your first PFL event on Friday. You were there front and center with a bunch of Bellator guys. What did you think of the event?
I mean, the production was nice. I loved the arena. I mean, obviously it was a smaller venue, but it was, very well dressed, beautiful screens. They have a stage. I liked it. I thought it was pretty nice.
So I said at the beginning of the show, way too long. You put 6 title fights on a card. You're playing with fire, and it felt like it dragged. Do you agree or disagree? You were there. I wasn't.
Yeah, I did. And that's what I mean by, it's challenging because there's multiple issues. So number one is anytime you have a title fight, it's really a 50-50 on just how exciting it's going to be, right? Because these are the best 2 guys in the weight class. So whether it's a tournament, these are the guys that beat everybody else, or, it's just a number 1 contender fighting for a title. It's a hit and miss because you're going to get 2 guys that are very tactical and very strategic, and the belt's on the line. So those fights are usually cautious. Now you multiply by 6, and then if they go to distance, there's no elbows allowed. So a lot of the ground and pound guys can't, cause too much damage. So it's going to drag on. So yeah, it starts to become a little overwhelming. But the fans in the audience were pretty engaged the whole time. They were cheering on and pretty much on board. But I would, for my taste, even if you're running the tournaments, I believe it's better to you pick your anchor fights. You say, these are the 2, 3 weight classes we're going to focus on promoting. Everybody else will still fight and they'll still win. And then you just mix the upper card with a little bit of, holy shit moment fights. Like, you put on fights are going to keep people awake and exciting, and then you mix it in. And I think that might have made it a little less prolonged. But, that's just a matter of opinion.
So I would imagine, given your position, and I saw a bunch of tweets in support of you over the past week, a lot of fighters are probably hitting you up, asking you about the future. Is this an awkward spot for you? Because you're not the one. I mean, as of right now, you're not going over, right? You have no deal in place, but I'm assuming that they have a better relationship and a long-standing relationship with you as opposed to the PFL guys. They don't know them. And so you're having to field questions about their future that you probably can't even really truly answer, right? Is that tough?
Tough? No. Listen, first of all, I think it's flattering. Honestly, I'm truly flattered that, people that have always sat on the other side of the table. These are the guys whose managers I've negotiated with, on my side, and then we're on the other side. So we've always been on the opposite sides of the table. So to have this much support and this much, this much positive things to say from the fighters, I think is flattering. So I'm very flattered by it. As far as being difficult, it's really not. I think one of the reasons why I've always had a great relationship with the fighters is because I'm a straight shooter. I don't beat around the bush. I don't give them the soft version. Just tell them how it is. And I told them, I said, listen, here's one thing I can guarantee you. And I think every fighter at the end, right, at the very end, and I've been around fighters 25 years now, and I know this for a fact. At the end of the day, this is what I said to them all, and I calmed them all down. I said, listen, their checks will cash, the cage is made out of metal, and the punches hurt the same. So don't worry. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But you're still going to fight. You're still going to make money. So don't worry about it. Just let the dust settle, and things will fall into place.
Some fight, like Cris Cyborg, very vocal about not hearing from anyone. Do you understand the frustration? Do you say to someone like that, hey, just chill out, they had to get through this event? Like, I think she was very upset that some fighters were there and she apparently didn't get a call. I don't know, maybe you know more about this. Seems like she should be there, right? She has 2 potential big fights over there with Pacheco and Kayla. What can you say about that?
Um, Listen, I believe that um, part of this is also a little bit of growing pains.
Mm,
I think PFL just acquired a new roster of fighters. They don't have a relationship with the fighters. They don't know the fighters. Fighters don't know them. Um, Obviously, during any merger, um, for some reason, everybody always takes this cautious adversary position. Even fans are looking at it like, some big failure. It's not. It's a merger. I mean, one company said that this company has built a product that we would like to acquire to expand our footprint in a business. In every other industry, this is a big thing and it's celebrated. In our industry, for some reason, it's a lot of booze and, well, they suck, and that's ridiculous. With that, they've acquired a whole lot of fighters, a lot of them that have reached a certain level in this industry, like Cyborg, right? I mean, she's been around forever. She's the OG. And those people are used to being treated a certain way. And I'm sure when the chips fall in place and everybody gets settled in their desks, so to speak, they will be. So you tell Cyborg, listen, I'm sorry. I hear you. I don't disagree with your frustration. But, just relax. Let us get settled. Let us unpack, and then we'll reach out, and everything will be fine.
Dawn said last week there were about 210 Bellator fighters under contract. Perhaps you would know the exact number.
Yeah, pretty close.
Okay, do you believe all of them will follow along and get fights now under the new PFL Bellator company?
I believe the intent is to find everybody a home. Some of these people will stay within the Bellator ecosystem, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will get integrated into PFL's tournament structure. But I believe at least the initial desire, from what I hear from PFL and Don, is to make sure that they keep as many fighters as they possibly can. Because he's a nice guy. Like, I don't know Don very long, but what little I've talked to him, he's a decent guy. He's not trying to hurt anybody. He's not trying to do bad by anyone, right? I mean, let's be fair. Viacom announced that they will shut down sports by the end of this year, right? So, in theory, this man had no reason to buy anything. He could have just sat back and waited until they shut it down and pick up the pieces. But he felt that he started to be engaged in this process and he should finish it and bring the fighters on board and then try to integrate them. So I think the initial thought is to try to keep as many of them as possible, if not all of them. But at the end of the day, it's a business. You have to run a business.
Sure. To that point, I actually asked him last week after our interview, by the way, why didn't you just wait until they close shop and then you just pick up the pieces and you don't have to give them any equity? And he said it was so that, the fighters, have homes and you can honor the contracts. And maybe there's a part where they didn't want to get into a bidding war, right? Because now the UFC can bid on a guy like Johnny Eblin or Apache Mix. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised ultimately that they did that they didn't just wait and take their chances?
Yeah. I mean, I was. I mean, from a business standpoint, and these guys all come from a business background, right? I mean, they're not fight promoters. They're businessmen. From a business standpoint, it made all the sense in the world. Even if you lose a Johnny Eblin or Patrick Mix, so you build a new one.
Sure.
At the end of the day, you would still acquire, a quite sizable roster and could get better. But he felt like, he felt like this was a better move. Because they were so far along already into it and promises had been made. So,
right.
At least that shows, he's a good guy. He's not a bad guy.
Yeah, they get the IP, they get the library, et cetera, et cetera. Can I ask you about the employees? Right. He said there were 21 and they all have homes. Do you believe they will all come over?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, that's not a question to ask me because I'm not the one hired. This is what I can tell you. I've been around this game for a long time. We have some of the best guys that do this, from operations to marketing to TV to everything. We really do. I think the conditions and the way, we've done events all over the world. we're a small company with a large, with a large footprint with Viacom, but as Bellator itself, we were very small and robust. And these are some of the best guys. So if they're smart, they'll keep as many of them as they can. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to them.
I know I'm somewhat putting you on the spot here, but like, is that something that you'll say to them? Like, hey, if you want me, they have to come too. Like, do you feel that kind of connection to your guys? A lot of them I've spoken about on this show, who I think are great. The PR team, we obviously know because we work with them on a day-to-day basis. But like, a lot of these guys are probably in the dark right now and don't know what's going to happen. Are you going to try to fight that battle?
Yes. That's why I said, like, we have to sit down and really talk,
right?
Because there's certain things that I want, and and there's certain things that they want, and we've got to make a deal. But part of it is, yes, there's some core team of guys that I believe will be instrumental in our success, and they should stay.
Okay, and I'll let you go in a moment. I know you have to go. Just curious, this PFL Bellator card that they're talking about, is it an ambitious February? Like that's in like a little over 2 months. You think they can get that done? What do you think?
I mean, listen, I thought parsing Bellator away from Viacom and unwinding this big wad that was intertwined into, the very infrastructure of the company, and being able to actually close this deal was a tall order, and they got it done. So it's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of questions, do they throw elbows? Do they not throw elbows?
Yeah.
What happens to whoever wins this title? Like if Bader becomes a 2-division champion, does he jump in the tournament the next year, or how does that work? Or what happens? I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be worked out and answered. I think there's a lot of fighters that need to get on board. I think it's a tall order, but it's doable. Sure.
If you don't go over for whatever reason, do you think that'll be it for you in the fight game?
Yeah. I think so.
Damn. So, I mean, we could either go here or we could go here. I mean, there's a lot at stake here.
Yeah. I've been at this for a long time, and I don't have it in me to start from scratch.
Right.
And there just isn't anybody else, right? I mean, if you don't go to PFL, obviously I'm not getting hired by the UFC. ONE FC pissed away $600 million, is about to go out of business. Where do you go?
What do you mean go out of business?
Well, they're going to go out of business. I mean, these people scammed everybody they could scam, and they've run out of people to scam. So they're going to
Here's
shut
the real
down.
Mike. I like that the real Mike comes out now. This is the Mike.
But I mean, it's the truth. I mean, come on, 10 years. You can't be a startup for 10 years. Jesus Christ. At some point, you got to start showing something. So they're going to go out. So where's there to go? There's nowhere else to go. I've always said this is like the largest small industry in the world. It's big. It's on TV. There's millionaires being made. There's all these stars. But at the end, it's a handful of people that run it, and a handful of people that have an ability to do anything with it. And if I don't end up at PFL, there's literally nowhere else to go. So I'm done.
Maybe would you want to go back to managing?
No.
I've had enough of that.
No. Management is about relationships, and I've burned quite a few, so I don't.
All right, fair enough.
I don't think I'll be. I think I'll move on. Do something else.
When do you think you'll know for sure?
This week.
Oh, really?
I mean, I'm meeting Don and Pete tomorrow, so I think a lot of questions will get answered, and we'll go from there.
Do you need me on the call?
No, we're good.
You sure?
Good. I think I can handle it. I've negotiated a few deals in my life. I think I'll do okay.
All right, fair enough. Well, congrats on everything you accomplished with Bellator, and of course throughout your entire career, which dates back well before Bellator. Thanks for always being kind. Appreciate it. And good luck with the meeting, and keep us posted. Hopefully it works out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Errol.
All right, there he is, Mike Kogan, a longtime Bellator executive. Fascinating times in the world of fight sports, like I said. Big meeting tomorrow. Doesn't need my help. I offered it. Would have been nice.
He may change his mind.
You think he'll ask for my help?
Maybe, like, right in the middle of it, he'll start sweating. He's like, let me make a call real quick.
Let me get Hawani on the horn here. I mean, they seem to like me. Good guys. We'll see. We'll see what happens. He did bring up a very good point there. for as good and as smart as Don and Peter Murray are, they aren't traditional fight guys, so to speak. And so it is good to have that traditional fight guy or two or three or four or five or woman who just knows the fight game. And look, they've done pretty damn well over the last 6 or so years since taking over World Series of Fighting and turning it into PFL and everything that they've accomplished. But, you know, having that guy who has relationships with the managers and the fighters and all that stuff and is able to build talent is an important person to have on the team. So let's see how it all plays out. A ton of questions that need to be answered between now and I would say April of next year. Are they going to get that, you know, Bellator PFL card under their belt before the season starts in April? Who's going to come over? Where are they going to land? You know, how's the talent going to disperse? All that stuff. Can't wait to see how it all plays out. And where's this stuff going to air? Where are we going to watch all this stuff, especially here in America?